Greetings, this is Doc Ock coming to you live and direct from Black Facts Headquarters Central this evening with another installment of Doc Ock at noon and 9. Still doing our thing every single night without question, and glad to have you on board. We hope everybody's doing as fine as we are, because we're doing this, feeling as fine as wine in the summertime. And summertime is definitely here, even though it has been raining quite a bit. It's very unusual to have this much rain at this time of the season, but such is life. Okay, you just never know what's going to happen next, and into each and every life, some rain must fall. So we're just taking it one day at a time, dropping a rhyme whenever we can. So let's go ahead and get this party started. You know what we're doing tonight? We are continuing to read from our story, Abraham Hannibal and the Raiders of the Sands. And we haven't got to the Raiders part yet, but trust and believe they're coming. The Raiders are coming. And we're not talking about the Los Angeles Raiders, but we are talking about some people that are into some things like pirating type activities and such. So, yes, we will be getting to the pirates shortly. But in the meanwhile, let's go ahead and read our proverb for today. And the proverb for today is, when the fool is told a proverb, its meaning has to be explained to him. Ouch. Ooh, that kind of hurt. Smarted a little bit. When the fool is told a proverb, its meaning has to be explained to him. So now you understand exactly why I don't explain my proverbs to y'all. Because I don't take any of my peoples out there to be no fools. That's right. So just be cool. Think about it for a while. And it'll come to you. Okay? An answer will come to you. And by the way, that is, I believe, I'm pretty sure, oh yeah, it's an Ashanti proverb. Those Ashanti, they always come hard. They always come hard with the proverbs. So let's go ahead and turn to our story of love, war, and glory with our friend Abraham Hannibal of Ethiopia. So let's see what happens today. We're in chapter 17, and the year now, the date is November 1703. 1703. So we're way back before the Declaration of Independence was even thought about yet. Boom. And our hero is about to embark on a journey to France, Paris. He's going to see to the embassies. So I guess I'm pretty sure he's either going to go see the ambassador. I don't know if he's supposed to see the king, but he's definitely supposed to act as an emissary of Ethiopia to the country of France, because Ethiopia already has established relationships with a variety of European countries, including France, which is the predominant country at the time. Everybody wants to engage in French culture, cook French food, and speak, act like and dress like the French. So French culture is predominant at this time, like American culture is today. So let's see just what goes on with our friend today. Name of the chapter is Disguised, and I'm sure we'll find out why. The big rains had been over for 2 months now, but still Murad did not arrive. Dr. Poncet was beginning to fuss about losing the monsoon, as he called it. If we don't leave soon, my child, he explained to Abraham, there will be no wind to blow us north up the Red Sea. Abraham and the doctor were sitting under the big tree outside the yard gate, most days since he had arrived in Dibarwa. Poncet used to spend a bit of time telling the boy stories about France, which Abraham then passed on to Leah and the other children. Today, as usual, Abraham begged, "Teach me some more French, Dr. Poncet. Please, 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 please teach me some more French." He knew the French words by now for all sorts of things and actions: mother, father, sister, lion, like, don't like, and so on, as well as some high-sounding whole sentences. It wasn't too hard, really, not for someone who already knew by heart more than 40 of the 150 Psalms of David. He stood up, practiced a couple of deep bows like a real Frank, the way Dr. Poncet had taught him, and then went through some of his lines. The Emperor of Ethiopia sends brotherly greetings to the King of the Franks. And my name is Abraham, and my father is a noble lord of Africa. And France is a most beautiful and interesting country. Today, they had a go at greetings and asking after people's health. But Dr. Poncet seemed distracted, and they stopped early. Another week of waiting passed, and it was the night before the caravan was to leave for Massawa and the sea. They had given up waiting for Murad and the horses, and were just taking some bales of coffee beans, perfume, and spices to sell on the way, and small gifts like gold brooches and bracelets and things like that, as well as the ears and feet of the dead elephant. A funny kind of present for Louis, the Sun King, thought Abraham and Leah. Granny Esther and the stepmothers were trying to comfort the 9 children. Some of them were younger than Abraham. Some were several years older, but all of them were anxious, lonely, and scared. Abraham was sitting in the hut with his mother and sister, and Makeda was trying as well as she could in the dim light to cut off the lovely black cloud of Leah's hair. "When your father asks where you are," she said to the girl, "I'll say that you are sick with grief and need to rest. By the time he discovers the truth, it'll be too late." "He won't beat you, mother, will he, when he finds out?" asked Abraham anxiously. Makeda shrugged. "And if he does, come on. That's good enough now, Leah. Let's change your clothes." And Leah put on a set of boys' clothes, very rough and poor, dirty white cotton breeches, shirt, and a cloak. "Do I pass for a donkey boy now?" She did. Abraham and Makeda would have laughed if they hadn't been feeling so tense. It was no good trying to sleep. They talked about Nimrod and how Makeda would look after him and make sure he didn't miss them too much. Abraham told them yet again Dr. Poncet's stories of France and the Sun King, and they talked about how one day they would come back to Dibarwa, grown up and full of knowledge of the world. Then at last they could hear people beginning to stir, and they said a last goodbye to Makeda inside the hut, for Leah was to slip down into town under cover of darkness and join the caravan there. They got a plan. The 3 of them hugged each other tightly, sitting on the clay bed in the darkness of the hut. "You'll always have each other," whispered Makeda. "You are mother and father to each other now, mother and father." They all smiled, and she wiped the tears from her eyes and theirs with the corner of her white cloak. Abraham went out to where Nimrod lay chained in the yard, and he knelt on the dusty ground and buried his face in Nimrod's great, rough mane. "Oh, Nimrod, my lion, I thought you would be my lion forever. Oh, my lion, Nimrod." And he rubbed Nimrod's big, soft, fluffy ears and tickled him under his chin for the last time, and Nimrod growled gently as if he knew. When Abba Michael came and blessed the travelers and their journey and checked that Abraham was still wearing the little silver cross that he had received at his christening, finally Abraham said goodbye to his father, bowed and kissed his feet. See, now that's That's what you call culture right there. Kiss your daddy's feet when you leave town. That's right. His father raised him up, rested his hands on the boy's shoulders, and said quietly, "Remember, Abraham, our emperor's words. Show the king of the Franks that the youth of Ethiopia is the best in the world for courage, wisdom, and high breeding. Show him." But then the tall, stern-faced man picked him up and cuddled him as if he was still a tiny boy, and Abraham clung to him fiercely, but without a sound or a tear. And as the stars faded and the sky grew pale, Makeda sat watching on the compound wall once again, this time facing northeast towards the sea, and watched the caravan disappear out of sight. And this time she knew it was no use waiting for it to return. Chapter 18, Drowned in the Red Sea. Abraham had never known heat like it, not even down in the valley of the terrible river. They had been picking their way for 3 days now down the vast, steep mountainside that separates high Ethiopia from the coastal lowlands. With each step, the air was becoming heavier and wetter and hotter, and Abraham and the other highlanders weren't used to it, nor were the poor donkeys. Dr. Poncet was having terrible trouble with his shoes. It was bad enough for the others with their nimble bare feet, but he had cheered everyone up by taking his hair off. Instead, he was wearing a huge straw hat. Below, they could see a sandy plain dotted with trees. Then one of the old donkey drivers shouted out, "The sea! The sea!" Far beyond was a hazy shimmer. The children all squinted at it through the sun, but it didn't really look like anything unless you knew what you were looking at. 3 days later, they were standing sweltering next to it in an endless stretch of blue water, bigger than the children could ever have imagined. "I can't believe we're going across that," muttered Abraham to Leah, who was standing next to him with her cloak round her head, still in donkey boy disguise. A few little gifts to the other donkey boys had made sure that they didn't pass her secret to the caravan leader, and Dr. Poncet and the 9 other noble children had sworn to keep her secret too. Dr. Poncet didn't seem to think much of the boats. He marched up and down the harbor edge shouting and waving his arms about. "Look at these dhows. Not a nail in any of them anywhere. Planks tied together with ropes. For God's sake. And look at those monstrous sails. Coconut leaf mats. Would you believe it? Far too heavy and rough for the crew to move safely. And what about the mast? What are we supposed to do with a single mast if it breaks in a storm, eh? In any case, they're all far too small." In the end, he found an Indian-built boat with 2 masts and cotton sails instead of a local Arab dhow, and the cargo was loaded onto it. Now was the moment the 2 children had been dreading. The load bearers and the donkey drivers and all of the servants, except for Dr. Poncet's 2 special ones, weren't needed any longer and were about to be paid off and sent home. Leah picked up a stray package, and she and Abraham and the other children walked steadily up the gangplank on board the ship. Then she pretended to be busy behind a pile of cargo in the hold. Abraham watched Poncet paying the men on the shore and saying goodbye. The line of men in front of him was moving oh so slowly, but at last there were only 2 left. "We'll be leaving soon, I think," he hissed at Leah. But suddenly the ship's mate came past her, stopped, and pulled her up on deck. "Don't forget this one," he shouted across at the caravan leader. The caravan leader squinted at her across the fierce sunlight and called, "Come on, boy, we're all off home now." Laia grabbed hold of a piece of the rigging and shouted back, "I'm not going home, I'm going with the ship." The caravan leader looked at Dr. Poncet in bewilderment and started to explain the delay to him as best he could. Abraham dashed to the ship's side and called to him, "Come here, sir, if you please, come right on board." The puzzled doctor did as he was asked. "Dr. Poncet, that's my sister." Them's like fighting words back then. "You know how much she wants to come with me? How much I want her to come? But your father has forbidden it. My mother knows. She helped us." The doctor sighed. "Oh, I don't know. What will your father say? You'll never see him again. Please, Dr. Poncet." And Laia called across from where she was clinging on to the ship's rigging, "Please, Dr. Poncet. Please, Dr. Poncet." "Oh, very well. Come with us." And he clumped back down to the harbor and told the caravan leader, he isn't one of yours. He's coming with us." The morning wore on, and the sticky heat was becoming unbearable. Dr. Poncet bustled around the harbor and the boat, back and forth across the gangplank, getting pinker and shinier every minute. "Dr. Poncet, why don't you have a swim in the sea to cool down?" said Abraham innocently. Dr. Poncet gave him a hard look. "It's salt water, don't you know? It just makes you sticky. Besides, I can't swim. But you go ahead. We're not setting sail for a while." Abraham looked down at the sparkling blue water below the ship's sides. It was so clear that he could see tiny stones on the bottom, some 15 or 20 feet below, and great flocks of bright little fish darting this way and that. He shook his head. "No thanks, I can't swim either." Instead, Abraham and the other children practiced walking across the deck. Although the sea was calm, they could feel the roll of the waves. The roll of the waves. And the little ship rocking beneath their feet, a strange, unbalancing sort of feeling. Finally, the doctor was back on board after paying everyone off. The cargo was stowed. The crew were hoisting their sails. And by now, Abraham and Laia were too excited to be sad. The caravan men were sitting in the shade, watching, waiting to wave goodbye before going off and spending their money. Suddenly, there was a commotion over by the harbor entrance. Two men, travel-stained and panting, came running across and called to the caravan men. "Is that Frankish doctor? Is that the Frankish doctor's ship?" They barely waited for a reply, but raced up across the gangplank and on board the ship. They were two men from Fares's court. "Where's Laia?" But Laia had already jumped down into the cargo hold and was crouching behind a sack of coffee beans. But Laia called one. Laia called one. "Your father commands you to come back. You will not be punished. Come here, wherever you are." One of the younger children suddenly burst into tears. The men strode over to him, squatted down at his face level, and asked again, "Where's Laia?" The boy, sobbing, pointed down into the hold, and the men were down there in a few strides. Let me go, I'm not going home, I'm not, let me go." They came up with Laia wriggling and lashing out between them. "Listen, I have gold. I can give you gold." Holy moly. She got money. "I have all my jewelry. Let me go with my brother." One of the men flung her over his shoulder and they marched back to the shore. The other man picked up the flimsy gangplank and threw it onto the ship and started to untie the mooring ropes, shouting, go now, go, set sail, set sail." The captain looked inquiringly at Dr. Poncet. The doctor shrugged. "Yes, set sail." Abraham stood at the ship's side and called at the two men standing on each side of the girl, their arms firmly linked with hers. Don't take her yet. We haven't said goodbye. Laia, don't be afraid for me. I'll be all right. I really will. Look after mother. And one day I will return. I promise I will. Goodbye, Laia. But Laia just stood and sobbed with terrible, shaking, silent sobs. Two sailors pushed the little ship off. The wind filled her sails, and she moved away from the harbor side. The 5 girls and the other 4 boys stood, clutching each other, looking wildly back at the land they were leaving. But Abraham stood alone at the ship's stern, calling, "Goodbye, Laia. Goodbye, Laia. I'll never forget you. Goodbye." The 2 men relaxed their hold. Suddenly, Laia broke free from them, and Abraham, with horror, saw her run to the water's edge with the cry, "Wait for me!" rip off her cloak and plunge in. Her first strokes were strong. She splashed bravely against the waves. Desperation drove her forward. Abraham and the other children, Dr. Poncet, his servants, and the crew stood as if turned to stone, staring. Not one of them could swim, but the captain started to bring the ship about, and Abraham called out, "She's going to make it. She's going to make it. Keep going, Laia. You're going to make it." And Pharez's 2 men, in spite of themselves, willed her to reach the ship, but it was no use. The ship was already too far from the dock. She swallowed water and choked. Her arms and legs grew tired. She sank and struggled to the surface again. Abraham suddenly pulled off his cloak too and started to clamber over the side of the boat. "I'm going in, so what if I can't really swim? At least I'm better at it than she is." But Dr. Poncet grabbed him and pulled him back. "No, my boy, no. There's no sense in 2 deaths." And as Abraham stood panting in Dr. Poncet's grip, Laia at last sank slowly down, 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 beneath the dazzlingly clear blue waves. And that is the end of that chapter. We'll read more tomorrow. But as you can see, this story is starting to pick up steam. Yeah, unfortunately, it picks up steam with the passing away of his sister, trying to keep up with her older brother, unfortunately. But as I said, this is a historical novel, so it's based on fact, although all the dialogue and everything, you have to make up dialogue. But in terms of the events, these are the kinds of things that that actually transpired. True story. True story. So I hope that doesn't make it difficult for all you little ones out there to go to sleep tonight. I hope you can still get your rest so you can be at your best when the new day dawns. Because right now it's time for you to take your little head and put it on your little pillow, on your little bed, and close those your eyes while you wait on that sun to rise. And when those sunbeams start to beam down on your eyes, you need to go ahead, rise and shine, and greet a new day. Grasp it right by the nape of the neck. Wrestle it to the ground and make it yours. Meanwhile, for all you adults out there, you know what you need to do. Number 1, give us a like if you're watching on Facebook. Number 2, if you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. And last but not least, go ahead and subscribe to the Tubular Black Facts channel. You see the big red button below? Hit that button. Give it a lick one time. Won't cost you a dime, and you might even like to hear me rhyme every now and then, because I do it all the time. In the meanwhile, we're going to clock out for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow, continuing our story of the Queen of Sheba and her only son, Menelik. From the Keber Nagas, the Glory of the Kings, the Book of Books, the greatest story ever told, as translated by E.A. Wallace Budge of the British Museum. Yes, fairly trustworthy author for the most part. As far as, I trust him as far as I can throw him. But he does do a pretty good job, and I have enjoyed reading what we've read so far. But we're also coming to the most exciting part of that story as well, because we're about to witness a miracle. So hopefully y'all are, oh, I'm sorry. That's right. We won't be doing that tomorrow. We're going to hold that for Monday. Monday, we will be talking about a miracle. But in the meanwhile, tomorrow and Sunday, we're going to do our rewind, and we're going to do a 2-week rewind on both days. So we're going to go back 2 weeks in time so you can catch up on anything that you might have missed from the 1st of July all the way to the present. And then after this weekend, we'll be getting ready for Selassie's birthday coming up July 23rd. So get ready. We're going to do a special presentation on that day as well. And by then, we should be done reading about the Queen of Sheba and her only son, Menelik. That's our goal, is to have that story finished before Selassie's birthday so we can focus on Jah Rastafari, the first and the last, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, ruler of the 3,000-year Solomonic dynasty of Ethiopia. That's right. That's what we're talking about. So join us tomorrow. You won't see me in the flesh, but you will see the recordings, because I have a playlist up there tomorrow. We'll have 2 playlists up there. One is Ethiopia 101, and the other one is Tales of Ethiopia. Check them out. Saturday, Sunday. Peace out without a doubt. We're going on into our extra. Oh, and let me not forget to give a shout out to Tony and Primrose. I see 2 people out there waving at me. All right, as we go into our extra.